Recording. Here's my mic check. Taiwan Special, episode 1 of the week. I'm doing this early on Saturday. Had some stuff come up, and I'm wearing my Punisher shirt, by the way, because I feel like punishing. Look, I've been developing and working on this Linux curriculum all week long. I mentioned it last week. And I've been adding to... Boy, I've been trying to get this curriculum finished, but I can't do the videos yet because the curriculum isn't done. I'm adding the what we learned, section of each. That's important. I mean, pedagogically, which, for those of you in Reed Rapids, that means education, like education philosophy. In pedagogically, you're supposed to have, the teaching points, the lesson points, somewhere connected to a lesson, so that if you learned what you were supposed to, so that teachers can make sure that they cover the important essentials, so that a test and homework can be written correctly, so that curriculum committees and oversight can compare the class to the core, or develop a core from the curriculum. So you've got to have like what you learned. That's important. I made them a little bit comical, which you've got to go. No, we're talking verb.vip, not .com.vip. It's a domain. Verb.vip, and you go to the repo. And I just finished 201, Shell 201, Lesson 12. The very end of Shell 201. There's 4 courses, and this is the second, 201. It goes 101, 201, 301, and guess what? 401. So I got all done, and I was reading this article, which is linked at the very end of the take section. It's called the take. I call it that. I invented it. And I was reading this guy's article as he was talking about text editors. Now, when you develop Linux, or when you develop, not Linux, but any software, when you write a computer program, you use what's called a text editor, because the program uses text, So that's what it's called, text editor. And what a good text editor will take your computer language and make it look like a rainbow. It'll be all colorful. And actually that helps you get your open and close quotes and your open and close parentheses matched up, if that makes any sense. Like in math, you're doing your math stuff and you got to have your parentheses opening and closing, and you got parentheses inside parentheses, and using quotes when you're writing, like quotes, like when you're writing a book or a blog or whatever, email, you use quotes to open dialogue and close. Okay. Well, it matches those up and makes them all colorful, so it's easy to make sure that you're doing your computer code correctly. Okay. All right. Okay. Text editor. All right. Well, one of the text editors is called Emacs, EMCAS. And this guy, should I look over it yet? I'm thinking I'm gonna, come on, open. Oh, there you are. And then, wrong button. Okay, great. Buttons are off, and I'm over there, and I'm finding his name for you. And this is going to take I'm almost there. Go to the developer, and then lesson 12, and then scroll down the awesome text editor that I have. Okay, and his name is, scroll over this way. Daniel, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Sorry. Okay, I'll try. Probably Meisler. Miessler, Daniel Meisler. And it's from danielmeisler.com. And it's called it's called The Differences Between Vi, Vim, and Emacs. Vi is VI, Vim is VIM, and EMACS. So The Difference Between Vi, Vim, and Emacs, by Daniel Meisler. Probably someone tries to pronounce it Meisler. If that's what it is, I'm sorry. Really, it's an amazing, witty article this guy wrote. And he talks about the difference, and he gets to the end, and he starts talking about Emacs. See, there's these 2 text editors, and they've been around forever, and they're kind of the basis of what computer programmers use to write their programs. Vi and Emacs. And they were both written in 1976 by some of the pioneers in the software industry, Bill Joy and Richard Stallman. Now, when Daniel gets to the end of this thing, he says Emacs, Vi is useful. It takes a little bit while to learn, but once you got it, it's awesome. And then Emacs, it's incredibly customizable. It can get up and do everything for you. It'll do the dishes if you program it how to. Okay, he's talking. But then he says the problem with Emacs is that it's complicated to get into. It's not just like Vi, or Vim, what they call it today, but same thing. It's not like Vim where you take a tutorial, you learn how to use it. It's a little weird at first, but then really it's really just amazing to use once you learn to use it. Like I edit stuff incredible. I'm like, I didn't know you could edit stuff faster. So using arrow keys, it's a boom, 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 boom. It's like you change everything. It's like, what was that? Vim, you got to learn to use it. Sorry for boring you with this, if I'm boring, but this is important. I'm rattling my paper so it sounds like I've got something I'm planning to talk about, because we're all creatures of marketing, right? Look, Vi is great, but you've got to learn it, and once you learn it, it's amazing. It's like learning to drive a car. You save the time you took taking the class by getting places faster. Emacs, however, has a whole lot more involved in order to move in. And what Daniel Meisler says at the end of his article is, the problem with Emacs is that nobody wants to join a church in order to use a text editor. I love it. He said nobody wants to join a church in order to use a text editor. Now, I laughed and I loved it, and I know what he's talking about, and he didn't use a lot of words, nowhere near as many words as I'd use, in order to make his point. But I know what he means. Now, the sad thing is that I know what he means. Because I shouldn't know what he means. Nobody wants to join a church in order to... George, they need... All right. Okay, so for the people in Reed Rapids, what he means by nobody wants to join a church is he means he doesn't want it to be hyper complicated with all these hoops to jump through. Okay. All right. It's all this stuff to set up and verify that this is the right way, and then take 10,000 classes and every week or whatever it is, and more than zero. And in order to... Okay. So see, it makes sense what Daniel said in his awesome, in his dazzling blog post is how I described it. It makes sense what he said, but it shouldn't make sense. So I'm going to say something else that makes sense that shouldn't make sense. Since Daniel's statement that shouldn't make sense makes sense, I'm going to say something else that shouldn't make sense that makes sense. Daniel said you shouldn't have to join a church just to use a text editor. And that makes sense, but it shouldn't make sense. So I'm going to say something else that shouldn't make sense, but makes sense. Just as much. Here it is. You've been waiting. You shouldn't have to join a church in order to join a church. Okay? I know, I told you that it didn't make sense, but it made sense. I warned you. You should look. I'm over here in Taiwan, and I'm looking at baptisms. I've got a buddy. He became Christian, and he's absolutely fed up with the Sunday morning scene. It's disgusting. The pastor's a boss. They don't grow. I mean, it's just what Jesus said. You crawl over land and sea to make one proselyte, and when you finally get the proselyte, whatever, when you finally make a convert, you make him just as much a son of hell as you are. That's what Jesus said to the Pharisees. They heap all these burdens on the people with all these rules. And in Taiwan, it's all about building their little culture. And the pastor is this mini king and very bossy, arrogant, know-it-all. Hard to survive. It's hard to breathe at work. You know, Taiwan wants to bring the Taiwan Special, my life from Taiwan. Taiwan wants to bring all this foreign talent into Taiwan. It still hasn't occurred to them that the way to get people from outside Taiwan to want to work in Taiwan is to make it not quite so difficult, shall we say, to work in Taiwan. Bosses are incredibly overbearing. It's weird. And pastors in Taiwan are very much the same way. And this guy doesn't want to put up with that in order to learn about Jesus. Who can blame him? I mean, probably one of the biggest reasons why people aren't Christians in Taiwan is because the pastors are there. They're like the boss. And that goes back to it. Sunday morning is great when it's a want and not a need. But once it becomes an obligation, it's something you've got, you're supposed to do, it becomes a mess. That's when all the abuses happen. Okay, but that's another discussion. So I'm over here, and I had a friend actually connected with Bethel up in Redding, California. A friend, I met him in Taiwan. He was an English teacher years ago. He's familiar with the unfortunate Sunday morning scene I'm talking about. He's less apt to speak up than I am, so I took flack and he didn't. I make a difference and he didn't, but he saw it. But he told me, I had a friend here in Taiwan that became Christian, another one, and my friend says, "Have you baptized him?" I said, "No." He says, "You should go baptize him." I said, "Yeah, that's a good point. This guy's from Redding, learns from Bill Johnson. Great. He's Christian. Go baptize him." Okay, so here's the thing. So I'm talking with these other Christians over here in Taiwan. Yeah, my buddy's going to show up this week, and we're going to go down to the beach and I'm going to baptize him. And he goes, wait a minute, don't you think that should be done in the church? I'm like, yeah, we're the church. There's only one. He goes, no, there's not only one. Church is plural. I said, no, church is singular. There's only one of those, at least per city. You could say the church of this city or that city, but it's the cities that are plural, not the church. So it's also, what is it? UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago. It's the same University of Illinois, but it's at Chicago. I think Ferris State University in Michigan even has a Ferris State University campus at Grand Rapids. So, universities will have a campus at another location, but it's one university. That's the church. It's the church at Detroit, or the church at Chicago, or the church at Leroy, which is a city, for those of you in Grand Rapids who need to hear me say what everybody else already knows. And so yeah. You shouldn't have to join a church in order to join the church. I said a church last time, but you shouldn't. Baptizing someone doesn't mean that the baptizer is a pastor or teacher. It only means that the person doing the baptism is a Christian. You don't baptize someone in the name of your church or in the name of your teaching. You baptize them in the name of Jesus. The rabbi's students would baptize in the name of the rabbi. Jesus' disciples were baptizing, and the people being baptized were, quote unquote, being baptized by Jesus, though it wasn't actually Jesus doing the baptizing, it was the disciples. Because the disciples of the rabbi, the teacher, can baptize on behalf of the teacher, and then it's considered the teacher doing the baptizing. So you baptize in Jesus' name. It's like Jesus baptized the person. We wouldn't really say that I baptized the person. We could say, I mean, I did the motions. But if I take my friend down to the beach, I say, because of your faith in Jesus Christ, I now baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he comes back up out of the water all soaking wet. I could say I performed the baptism, but I didn't really baptize him in the meaningful sense. Jesus baptized him. Because that's all that means. You're Christian, you get baptized. It's not complicated. And we don't need to add this rigmarole. We don't need to add, well, we've got to be careful who we baptize. No, he professes Jesus, he's baptized. It means no more than that. It requires no more than that. If you believe in Jesus, you get to be baptized. You probably should. And I don't want to get into the theology of it all, but baptism is simply for someone who's Christian. That's it. You don't have to join a church to get baptized. And frankly, you shouldn't have to join a church in order to join the church. There's one church, and it's the members of the people who believe in Jesus. Now, if you've got a little club of some kind, you've got a group, you've got a membership, and you do stuff together, okay, all right, have your tests and quizzes, and you're joining, starting to use Emacs in order to join your church. Go ahead. Fine. Do that. The other thing about this, I think I need to rant about this. I was just on the Bible hermeneutics site for Stack Exchange. Guy asked a question in John 3. I don't know, what was it? John 3:15. Why did Jesus say we to Nicodemus? And I got to looking, and I looked into it, and Jesus is talking about him and his disciples and probably John the Baptist. Now, the important thing, though, is that Nicodemus knew who we was when Jesus said to Nicodemus, we testify to what we really know. You, it's just a theory. That's kind of what Jesus is saying. We get confused by the we when we read that. Who's the we Jesus is talking about? The passage doesn't say. Nicodemus and Jesus knew who the we was, and that wasn't their focus. Their focus was on the fact of what Jesus was saying. Me and my crew, my disciples, the people with me, John the Baptist, we talk about stuff we've done, we've seen. We know this stuff. This isn't some theory. It's just a theory, Nicodemus. That's what Jesus is saying. That he speaks from real encounter. Likewise, when Daniel Meisler was getting to the end after he made his "you shouldn't have to join a church in order to use a text editor" brilliant, dazzling statement in his dazzling article, he says it's not the text editor you should be focused on, it's the content. It's what you produce with it. Remember, J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter author, writes longhand. And George R.R. Martin, the guy that does Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, he writes using WordStar 4.0 in DOS. It's not most people use Microsoft Word. It's me. No. I made my own. I made my own text editor in order to write the Watchstand Phrase 365. I'm a programmer, so I wrote my own. Yeah, what editor did you use? I wrote my own. It's available at the Pinkwright GitHub repo. It does the word counts. So pinkwright.com/PWC, I think. It's about the content. It's not about who baptizes you. It's not about doing it in the church so you have witnesses. Do it in public so that non-Christians see what you're doing, man. Baptism is for the beach. Doing baptism in the church where there aren't non-Christians to see what's going on? No, when I baptized Royu, I took him down to the beach, and I stood there, and this lady's watching from a little ways back, from behind some other people, and she realized what was going on, and she just starts clapping. There was a Christian there who was witnessing it. See, God provided the Christian witness. And then you had these non-Christians that wonder what's going on. What would happen if Christians just baptized themselves in public without making a big churchy thing about it? Just, hey, we'll baptize you. Go down there. And wouldn't that, why not? You want to talk about, going viral? Not that that's the marketing goal, because we're all about marketing, but it's not about who baptized you or the format you did it in. It's about the content of your life that comes after you've been following Jesus. This is a great early Taiwan special I did this week. Love you, and see you tomorrow, I suppose, or whatever the later date will be. I got to shut this off.